what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, shit.
Oh, that's another one. This was going up and down.
Did it go that way?
There's one going up, the other one.
What's that?
So if any of you ever wonder why when somebody, a blacksmith is hammering and then he'll go like that, that's like when you're talking, you say you know, we do a lot of you know, because you gotta get your thoughts together.
Yeah.
Hey,
Might come while you're going square, and go back around.
what?
Might come while you're going square, while you're drawing it out.
Oh, that might be square. That's just the way, I mean, okay, so Danny was pointing out that some of you may not know, when we're drawing it out, all we're looking to do, Danny was pointing out there, is we're just looking to get it longer. Now, square is real easy to work with. You're just turning it a quarter turn. I think that's kind of the reason, isn't it? I mean, that you hit it, and then you quickly turn it and hit it again. You want to work quick while that iron is hot. When we get it finished and we're ready to round up, then we'll start hitting on the corners and make an octagon, and then we'll go round. It's just a progression of steps that are efficient. I thought of that, so I had to think how to explain that, Danny. Put me on the spot.
Hey, just a comment on the tail end of
Uh-huh.
this. When you draw it out, don't hammer it here, because once you turn it, you make a spiral out of it.
When you're rounding it?
No, when you draw it out, draw it in the middle of the handle.
Well, I use the edge to kind of crimp it and
Yeah,
make it more efficient.
And when you do that,
Where's the
you bend it, and then when you turn it around,
Yeah.
you have to deal with something that's bent in all which way.
Well-
So when you draw it out here, you use the center and go this way, then you keep it straight.
Makes it faster on the edge.
You know,
That's just the way I learned
it's
to do it.
yeah. But
Everybody-
this is where your mass, the center of mass is.
Yeah,
on
that's
the
true.
angle.
So you can, like, what Jens was pointing out is it does get crooked on me. I have to straighten it. What you can do, a lot of people, when I started out, there was a book by Jack Andrews that was thought of to be, he was thought of to be really a good blacksmith, he was. And it was called The Edge of the Anvil, and he used the illustration of working on the edge of the anvil. A lot of times when I'm working that way, I've got a piece that is longer. With the tongs, I'm having to lift it a little more than I normally would. But that's how I kind of learned to do it. But if you don't want to do that, if you're talking, what Jens was saying, you want to be in kind of the center, you can also draw on this. But you're going to get it a little crooked. He's right about that. You're going to get it a little crooked. You're going to have to adjust that. But probably if Jens and I taught a class, back to back, we would disagree about all kinds of stuff because there's a lot of different ways to do it. So, but that's a good point, Jens. Yeah. We'll try your way. A lot easier when you get it smaller, guys. I switch back and forth, and then I'm going to check it. It's about a half an inch too short. And it's cool down. It's kind of a red heat now. If you were close to being rounded, you can still work that. That would be fine. If you're working on the tip, all you're going to do is split it. You got to have that tip hot. So a lot of times when I come out, if there's something I need to do on the tip, I'll do that first because this will hold the heat longer, and then I'll put it right there. Then you can also do it over here. Everybody has their way of doing it, guys. Figure out what works for you. Yeah, get that little. Okay, and this one I've got it a little flat, so we're gonna have to be really careful. That happens. You know?
One thing to point out, Jim, that might be when you get it to fall a little bit short of the length that you need, you kind of learn that, but when you start rounding it,
That's right.
rounding it,
They're about ready
you're going to
to.
draw it out a little bit more.
Yeah, it's about ready to octagon
Yeah.
and then round. But it ain't the way I want it yet, Alex. Try to keep that one from collapsing. So they get it flat. So, how many of you have a shop? Wait a minute, how many of you don't have a place to work on blacksmith? Raise your hand. Okay, so how many of you have coal forges? How many of you only use gas? Okay. So I use both. One of the things I have on mine is I've got a little tray out here that's adjustable so that I can set stuff up there and it doesn't fall in the forge. And also my table inside the forge is level with this. We could open that up and have the same thing, but that'd be a lot of heat. So we're not going to do that. My forge, the door is a guillotine. So I can open mine up, slide this piece in, and have it sitting there, and it's protected from the heat. So there's a lot of things you can do to modify to make them more comfortable to use. Another thing you can do is just take a little bitty squirrel cage blower, tiny one, and you can mount it over here, plug it in, and have it blowing a curtain of air across here, and it'll keep everything cool. You don't get burned. We had a demonstrator, Randy McDaniel, I think. He pointed that out to us. You can do it on a coal forge too, and it works great. So there's lots of different things you can do after you get your setup that you can modify and make it better. I'm working on this tip a little bit. And now I'm trying to go to the octagonal. YouTubers who are just artists. There's no other way to talk about it. I am not. They will take this and probably in the same amount of time, and they'll make it just as smooth as I'll get out. That's not my style. I like to see a little hammer mark. You're going to see that in almost everything I make. I just like that look. So mine's going to look a little rougher. But there's some folks that will just take it down and planish it. I've seen some guys, while it's hot like this, they'll sit there and hammer on it, and it'll be perfectly planished and smooth. You don't want to do that on the tip, like I said, it'll split it. But let's see if Alex was right. It's almost there. So I rounded it up, and it's like within a 16th of an inch. So we're good there. So that's
easy to match the first one.
what?
It's easy to match the first one.
Yeah, well, that's why I got a mark, dude. We'll see how I do now, huh?
So I found that when I do it, Jim, I round, if I'm doing, say, 5 or 6 inches, I
Yeah.
want it to be same length like that.
Yeah.
I found that it really works to leave them all square and then have them the same length and then round them off after you do that, and then they all come out pretty much the same.
Right. Well, you can take this, you know, if you're working in your shop and you don't care, or not that you don't care, but you've got everything set up the way you want, you can make all of these, and then make sure they all match up, and then go on to the next step. That's not quite as efficient because your metal's already, this is already probably 1,000 degrees, even though it's black, so it's going to reheat really quick. So it makes sense to kind of go to the next step with it. But you don't have to do it that way. You just draw them all out like that. But then the next thing is I'm putting about a 1/4 inch over the edge of the anvil and just kind of brushing it down. And then I'm just kind of shaking it, kind of looking at it. If I want it tighter, I'm going to do that. If I want to close it up, I'm going to do that. And you just get that little curl on the end. Most of these guys have seen that. Tom's over here dying of boredom. You know, he's seen it a million times in his young life. You're young, right?
I hope so. I don't think not as young as some of them, but
Is there any water buckets? Think about asking about that. Water bottle. I use my water bottle. I curl the next one. So if anybody isn't bored, like Tom, and wants to see this, come a little closer now. Just be careful. Thank you. So it's just
Making an S hook.
bending it over, and this edge is kind of rounded, and then you're just pulling it back. It's just real kind of quick and dirty.
so what's the benefit of putting in a bend like that on these hooks?
When you hang your coat on it, it doesn't get snagged with a sharp point. I don't know. It's decorative.
Well, that was the thing to me is because a lot of the times the first ones I made, I didn't think about it. I'm like, why wouldn't I want a sharp point? Like, get it as fine as I can. And then it's like, yeah, any jacket you hang, any hat, if you mess up and you look like Cinderella because you sit there and prick your finger on the end of the hook, it's you want something to where it works. And then if you do make it in, say, an S hook where it's going to hang from something else, you might want something that'll have something to catch on before it slides off on the other side.
But if you're gonna fight with somebody, this is what you want, right?
No, toothbrush. You start with the toothbrush.
Ooh,
Fire filters that are like that, but
okay. So the reason I asked for the water is the next step. Now we've got to, yes sir.
So since you're talking about the curlicue end,
Yeah.
how do you undo the curlicue when all of a sudden you roll it up and you go, oops, went a little too far on this one. It's a little too curly.
That's an interesting idea. You got a pair of strolling tongs. I just grab it, bend it out, and then flatten it on the end. I didn't bring mine with me today. Oh, that's great. Fantastic. Dog bowl will work in it. Yeah.
Alternatively, if you have a horn that's thin enough.
Anyway, the next step, we've got to hit on that curlicue. That's what we're going to call it now, the curlicue. Okay, pigtail. Anyway, we've got to hit that. Well, when I bring it out, it's going to be 1,800, 2,000 degrees. If I hit on it, it's going to crush it. So we don't want to do that. So that's where the water comes in. Just cool that in, bring it over here to the horn. Now you can hit on it to get your hook started. Oh, I'm not very good today. We're not to eat it again. Yeah, that's good enough. So, by doing that, I preserved the curlicue. When I first started, I was hitting on that. I quickly moved down to here after I started because there's no reason to keep hitting on that. But it was cooled off. The heat's traveling back through, but not enough to restore it. So that's how you make a hook. You can make hooks out of all kinds of stuff. I've made hooks out of, I'll get a lag bolt the right size, and I'll forge the bolt head down and make a hook, and then I can screw it into a beam. First off, you want to take the chromium off, because that'll make you ill if you heat that in the forge. The best way to do that is acid, but then you got to be careful with the acid. And then when you get through with the acid, it's got chromium in it, so you got to find a place that will. There's a place here in the valley that takes toxic waste. But it lasts a long time. It's not something. I've got some that I've been using. Unless you're doing production, you're doing tons of that, then you would buy the stuff uncoated. But anyway, there's that. So that's the first kind of step in making this hook. So the next step is you want the hook to fit in the back of that hook rack. So we're going to flatten the end. I put myself a mark here at 3/4 of an inch, so I didn't have to guess. I'm going to bring that out and flatten that down after I do that.
This might be another moment if you want to see something up close, since he'll be doing some light touches to also see how he cools it and goes through. So if you want to step forward, now might be a moment to see it.
Come on up.
Go ahead out. Not been here, but you don't know how. This is the time.
You just want to cool the tip. if those match or not. Let's see, here's one. Yeah, it's pretty close. Pretty close to the original one I brought. It's made on a form for a jig.
May I add a couple of 2 bits or statement? Oh, never mind.
You what? Yeah, I'm going up to my 3/4 inch bar.
2 cents. Your 2 cents.
So what that does, after I bend it, that allows me to put this behind here and rivet it on. The reason for that, if we put it in front and we put one rivet on it, it'll do this. So we're kind of doing Jacob's job. We're engineering. You know, we're doing some little engineering here. That flat part will keep it from rotating as much. It might move a little, but it's just kind of, it's not my idea. I saw this, somebody else did it, so don't think I'm rude. But anyway, it's just an idea. And then you could do it just the opposite. You could flatten it this side if you wanted to have something on the front of the anvil or on the front of the hook rattle. You do it that way too. But I don't think that's very attractive. So I'll stick with that. Got it all wet.
Not me.
Okay, this one I kind of screwed up. I was trying not to do that. It's kind of twisted, so we got to bend it. First one I screwed it on. Should have quit all over the head.
Are you using the flat part of the hammer?
No, I use the round part until I have to make some screws.
You draw it out just.
I'm lazy. The round part helps.
Okay, works for me.
Yeah. You know, until I'm finishing up, a lot of times until I'm kind of flashing it. I tend to use this when I'm going to octagonal, flat part. But if I'm making something move, I'm going to use the rounded part. Unless there's some reason not to. I don't know why. Like I said, blacksmithing is rapid design things. No mistake. Actually, not a design thing. Just covered up my mistake. I didn't bring a wire brush, so I'm not brushing any of this. Sorry, I forgot.
Jim,
Yes, sir.
during blacksmithing, you don't make mistakes. You just need to know how to heat up the iron and fix it.
That's right. One more. Just got to take another little work. So anyway, as I told you guys, we're going to do this like a cooking channel. I've already got my hooks made. I've already got this made. This is what we're going to do at the end. We're going to rivet this together. So we're not going to make any more hooks. I just wanted you to see how to do that. Now we're going to move on to the next thing. The reason I kind of picked this as a demonstration demonstration today is it shows a lot of processes in blacksmithing. Pinching this in, my wife says indenting, that was the word she used. We call that fuller. You can fuller from one side or you can fuller from both sides. I've got a fullering tool I made that does this. But if you don't have this, there's another way. The other way means you have to practice and get good. That's what you want to do anyway. You don't want to be bad. So I'm going to show you the alternate way with just the handle first. And then the second one we'll do under the fullering tool so you see both of them. Anyway, anybody got a question? No questions? Am I focused on?
I think so. Can I add a couple of statements?
Exactly. Please.
So one of the things that you've heard quite a few times by now is there's no wrong way to get something done as long as you accomplish at the end of it. We will be very open with you about how we do things. We'll tell you this is sometimes the way that's recommended. Some of it's leaning on history. Some of it's our own personal preference. There are very few times that we will, at the blacksmithing community at large, will state out, say, no, don't do that. And most of the time that comes with something with safety. For example, when we're talking about using certain kinds of metals in the forge without removing the coating. One of the things that a lot of us like to do is kind of junkyard blacksmith. We'll go out and we'll find steel, and our common statement is, in rust we trust. Because if the metal rusts, it more than likely does not have any kind of coating that has to be burned off or removed. But when you're first starting out, you might get something where somebody says, hey, I've got a lot of metal, here, take this, try this, do that. And one of the common metals I got handed early on when people found out I was doing medieval armoring was galvanized steel. Do not heat galvanized steel. There are plenty of warnings, there are plenty of stories of welders and smiths who thought that it's fine, they don't do it enough, they don't need to worry about that kind of poisoning. It can happen. So if you are working with different metals that you don't know, feel free to ask, feel free to do research. There's a lot of stuff on reputable websites and forums. There's a lot of groups and people that will talk to you. And most of the time they'll go, hey, maybe don't use that for what you're planning. And then everything we're working here, I'm pretty sure is mild steel, which means you can heat it, you can beat it, you can beat it black if you wanted to. There's a lot of things you can get away with. One thing that I was concerned with a lot of new people in the room, when he took it and he rapidly cooled that metal in water, if you do that while you're making a knife out of spring steel, you just ruined your material. And that will be one time, again, the community will go, no, let's not do that.
And I wouldn't have done that if I wasn't going to pass them around. I would have thrown them over on the table. There's no reason to do that unless you're going to let people touch it.
Well, there's that, and also when you're isolating heat by cool.
I was isolating the heat on the tip of those.
So,
but the other thing is, let me interrupt you just a second. So the other thing is, when I was a couple of years into blacksmithing, I was going to make a big meat fork, and I forged one. It was probably a little longer than this. I forged one end into my handle, and then I set it down on the table, and I went and did something else. And when I came back, that end that was the handle was still probably 400 or 500 degrees. But I thought I'd given it enough time to cool, and I didn't check it. The way you check it is the back of your hand. This is very sensitive to heat. Put it over it, getting closer and closer. You don't feel any heat. You can grab it with this side. So I grabbed that thing, and of course I let go real quick, and I burned my palm. Luckily, I'd been taught what to do. I would have called 911 or whatever and gone to the doctor. But I immediately went in the house. I got a mixing bowl out of the counter. I filled it full of ice, or not full, but some ice in it, put some water in it, stuck my hand in it until my hand hurt. pulled my hand out and waited until it started hurting again on the burn. Then I stuck it in, and I did that for probably 15, 20 minutes until the burn cooled off. Then I put aloe on and a bandage, and I never lost the skin. Going to the doctor's great, but sometimes by the time you get there, all that heat that's in your skin has caused the burn to get worse. I wouldn't stick it in the slack tub unless I didn't have any choice. If I had not been at home when I could do that. So that was the worst time I ever burned myself. The second time was I was at a class with a great blacksmith, Lynn Gilmore, I think he's up in Montana, and I was wearing a pair of leather gloves. And I had worked and worked and worked, had the leather gloves on, and I've been working for quite a while, and the heat had transferred to this end. And I had noticed it because I had the gloves on, but the next time I picked it up, the skin inside that is moist all of a sudden made steam, and my hand was burning, and I couldn't get the gloves off. Leather gloves, a lot of times you can't get them off. If you get them off, you'll pull your skin. But luckily, Glenn just took my hand and put it down in the slack tub. Cooled it off. I didn't get burned bad that time either. But if you do this long enough, you're probably going to get burned. And you got to have a plan. Tom was talking about safety earlier. You cannot be safe enough when you're messing with this stuff. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about
Okay.
hooks.
Yeah.
How do you put the holes in them, poke the hole in?
You can do it that way. I usually, what I'll do is I'll take it and I'll put it, this is what I do in my shop. I'll take it and put it behind here and I hold it here and I have something called the transfer punch. This is a 3/16 hole. I've got a punch that's 3/16. I'm going to set it on there and I'm going to put my punch in there and hit it. And I've got a little treadle hammer. And then that's the one that matches this. There's a match over here. So I've got to make sure I line them up for when I'm ready to rivet. Just like this one. I've got it all bolted together. If I take this apart, I take one apart and rivet it because that way I don't mix up and put this one over here. But I just drill them. You can't punch them. If you punch them, and your punch makes it a little bit bigger than your rivet, I'm using 3/16 rivets. If I punch it and I get a little excited and I go too much and I get it 1/4 inch, my rivets aren't going to work and I have to go find a 1/4 inch rivet. So I just drill it after it's cooled. It cools off, I just mark, I make my marks on it and I just drill it out. Yeah.
Now there can be some benefits to drifting a hole, which is basically a way of punching it, but it moves it out. And one of the comments some blacksmiths will make is a machinist will come through and say they can do anything a blacksmith can do, until the blacksmith asks them to put a 1/2 inch hole in a 1/2 inch piece of metal. And the machinist or the drill goes, okay, go through, and it punches out the side and it's useless. When you punch or drift, you can actually move the metal out to the side, and that allows you to keep some of that. You still lose some, but it is a way. But it really does come to the technique and how much time and what you want the final product to look at. Some people say, well, traditional blacksmiths will do everything by hand. Blacksmiths were the first people to probably try and go, electricity? Yes. Water wheels? Yes. Make our lives easier? Give it to us. So we'll always embrace the latest and greatest technique.
Okay, so on that piece of metal, we can't look at it now, it's hot. I had already laid it out for where my fuller mark was going to go with the center punch, right up here on the edge, so I can see it. And then I've got a stamp, so I put a center punch mark in the center. That's where the stamp's going to go. You won't see that center punch mark when we're finished. It'll distort it. But I want a mark so I can line it up. Also, if you buy a store-bought center punch and you're going to use it for blacksmithing, I would recommend they're usually rounded. I'd recommend you put tapered edges on it. When I bring this out, it's going to have scale on it. And a rounded center punch, a piece of scale will get in. It's hard to find. A square one, once if you don't have a fulling tool, come out to the edge of the anvil. I'm looking at my center punch mark, putting it right on the edge, lifting it up, and I'm going to try to hit in that spot. Really good practice for hammer control. And I'm flipping it over because I know I'm not going to be exactly precise. But if you look, that's just there to help you get things right. You know, say I want to one hit from the end, and that's just right in there, almost crushed. Anyway.
How wide is that? Start out with that.
1 inch by 3/16. Anyway. So this will take a little more time, not a lot, but it takes a little more than this. This just makes things quick and efficient. You know, but if you don't have a welder to weld this up, and you don't have a friend or one of the other blacksmiths doesn't do it for you, or you know, or you just want to be a traditionalist, you just say, I want to do it like the guys used to do it. They didn't have all this stuff. That's what you want to do. You like the look of it. If you're demonstrating at a fair or you're selling at one of these craft shows and you have the opportunity to forge, that'll bring a lot of people in. They love seeing it. They're hoping you're going to hurt yourself. You know, that's it.
NASCAR effect.
But anyway, if you do something like this and you're over there working with it on the edge, and you come up with it, you've got a fuller on pretty close. Well, you're pretty damn amazing, you know. I mean, that's a lot of people they don't ever use a hammer, so they're going, wow, that's pretty cool. This is mild steel. Oh, this is mild steel. Then I took a piece of 3/8 inch round and I welded it on. I just Jeff, I was just welded one side to that side, and the next person. I welded and I cleaned up and I welded and I cleaned up, did all that, and then I took it and twisted it. One of our blacksmiths he demonstrated the last meeting. He developed this stuff called super quench. It's called super quench. At Sandia Labs when he was blacksmith at Sandia Labs, and it's a soap. We used to be able to get Shackley Basic Eye. I don't think you can get that anymore. And it's Dawn dishwashing liquid, salt, and water. There's a formula, certain amounts of it, and it will harden mild steel to a point. It won't make it like Tom was talking about a knife. It's real high carbon. It won't make it that way, but it'll make it good enough for this. I've used this dozens of times, and it's still in good shape. So you can make this out of high carbon steel, out of tool steel, and it should be great. But you can also make these tools a lot quicker that way. And for what I'm doing is perfect. If you need the tool steel, then you need to make it out of tool steel.
And you can just Google super quench and it'll pull it up.
I'm going to find my piece on the edge here. Notice I'm not doing this. I don't have enough control. I'm just tapping it. It does. whack less, whack more. Toolbox is kind of quick. Anyway. Oh, here's the one. Now I don't have any excuse yet. I can clean my skills.
We got a qu-
On that super quench, I hear that it only lasts like a year or two, and then you gotta basically dump it and make a new
Yeah,
batch.
but it's pretty much gone by then. You can dump it out. I don't think you have to take it anywhere.
Yeah.
I
Now-
would probably dilute it if I was gonna. I would dump it on my driveway or gravel.
Now for clarification, they're talking about the actual liquid that you're quenching into, not the heat treatment on the metal. That will last, but the actual solution, once you mix it, you have about a shelf life of a year before you have to
It'll turn color.
redo it.
Whenever it's brand new, I think. Whenever it's brand new, anytime you use it, you gotta stir it up. And I think it's kind of a bluish color. And then when it goes bad, it'll turn green. And you'll notice that it's not hardening anything anymore.
Well, you need to check the expiration date on your non-liquid because it's supposed to be buying.
It's a little twisted. So, same thing. We're talking about straightening out that stuff. Keep your stuff straight. It makes it a lot easier to work with. So I'm going to take this out. Then we'll reheat it. Doing this over and over again is probably boring, like paint drying. Sorry. The next one will go quicker. With this way, doing it this way, you can get some of your taper started. And the flooring too is done. It's going to come out that way. It's just,
Did you come up with your own designs on yours?
on my, what, the hook rack?
Yeah, on the rack.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
No, I saw somebody had something similar.
Okay, well,
I
no,
saw a
I think
pic-
that's extremely attractive.
No, I saw a picture somewhere, I think it was online. Maybe it's been on,
Pinterest or something like that.
Dirty Shit. There's these two guys that are real funny. One of them's more of a videographer like Tom here. One's more of a blacksmith. And they had made something, they had brass or copper rivets. I didn't like that. They looked kind of messy. And they're basically learning as they go. They had something similar, but there's been other people that have made this. And so I just went out there and figured out the dimensions I wanted. They didn't give it, I don't think they gave any dimensions. But anyway, they're called Dirty Shit. They're funny. They're kind of entertaining. While I'm doing this, some of the times I'm hitting up here with my hammer, I'm missing. You gotta fix that. But that's okay, the next step's gonna take care of that. But I am hitting it up here, it's not perfectly chopped off. So, hey,
It wasn't a question, it's more a comment about the straightening thing.
Yeah.
The guy that I learned from, he said, if you practice straightening and every time you pull it out of the fire, when it comes time to do it for real on the finished piece, you practice it a zillion times, so when it comes time to make the finished piece perfectly straight, boom, you just do it because you do it every single time you put your piece back in there, so that you aren't sitting there like struggling to get your final piece looking artistically perfect.
yeah.
It's one of those continual practice things.
So I've got my taper where I want it. So if you look at your demo sheet on the front, the bottom right, it says blacksmith turns. So I was working on the far side edge of the anvil. You watch somebody demo and they talk about the far side edge. That's what I was doing over here. Now we're going to go to the near side edge. All I'm doing is using the handle to support this end, hitting up here. So it's smashing this down more rounded. And I'm doing that, so I'm just using the edge of the anvil as a form. If you notice, that's kind of oblong. Leave it that way. We can round it up. You can also use the far side edge in a similar fashion. I'll show you that. But to start with, I usually like to use the near side. Yeah.
So when you see Jim working, you see him always try to do the symmetry with one heat. Meaning when he hits it this way, he always tries to flip the second side at the same time. Because that gives him a good idea of where the metal is going. When you do two different heats in that, you get two different temperatures in it, and the iron flows differently. So when you do it in one heat, you get the same temperature, same temperatures, and it is a lot more uniform. You get the chance to make it a lot more uniform.
Hey.
So just to translate for my little brain, so that means like you flip it, so you work full.
Yeah.
Yes.
Full side.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Don't sit here and hammer on it, and hammer on it, and hammer on it until it's getting cool, and now you've got to, like Jim was saying, then you got to reheat. Maybe this time you bring it a little hotter, and so you try to hammer on that side, and it distorts a little. Hammer a little bit, flip it over, hammer some more, look at it. I'm looking at it. I'm stopping, looking at it, see if it looks similar, symmetry, and keep working it until you get it where you want it. If you try to do all one side at one time, it's not going to work out, or at least it never does for me. That's a good looking handle. How much are those?
25, right?
25?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good price. I'm doing advertising while I work.
We noticed it was only slightly pitched.
Oh, you mean I wasn't subtle enough?
On that general topic for some of our newer people, in general, metal moves easiest where it's hottest or where it's thinnest. Also, usually where it's thinnest is where it'll heat up the fastest as well as cool down the fastest. So as he's talking about trying to work it at two different heats where he says he's got the feel for it, when you reheat it and you bring it out, now you have one area that's definitely thinner and different heat than the other. So your first couple of hits, you might not have the right feel for it. So thus the flip back and forth. Thomas just called it rustic vigor.
Well, if I never took a class from Francis Whitaker, but he was taught by oh God,
Yellen, right?
Huh?
Yellen, right?
Yellen. He was taught by Yellen. I mean, their stuff is on the National Cathedral or the Mint up in D.C. You know, they're far above anything y'all ever read. But people said that if you, Francis Whitaker in the class, you'd say, okay, now we're going to straighten this and everything. And somebody said, he said, if you straighten this, it's not straight. There's no decorative askew, but I'm more of a decorative. I agree. My pizza's just a little bit off, so I'm playing with it. Now this started out as 3/16. It's getting thicker. It's not quite a 1/4 inch, but this is getting thicker. If you notice on the finished pieces, the starting thickness is back here in the center. Everything else is a little thicker. That's why I chose 3/16. I wanted to have some mass, but 1/4 inch gave it more than I wanted. So that's why I had this, and I also had 3/16 in my shop. That's another reason. Okay, so that's pretty much, other than kind of trying to clean it up by hitting on the corners so that there won't be a sharp edge. That's pretty much where I put them at this step. I don't know where that is. I should know. I wrote this.
Authors never remember what they wrote.
Okay, it's on the photo 3, the first step. Anyway, I'm going to be a volunteer. Anybody want to volunteer? This is a butcher. All it is a tool that's made at a 45-degree angle. We're going to use it to make a decorative cross. So moving on the other side of the hammer. And we're just going to do this freehand. Okay, there's no mistake. So we're just going to try to pinch a little bit of the corners, and we're going to start over here. And if you notice where the paper is, we're just going to pinch a little. Right, now put it back in there. Wiggle it in. There you go. Lift your hand. There we go. Okay. Now. Yeah. We're going to do this one next. See your butchers here? You're going to go on. I'm going to have it right here. You're going to, we did this side. This side. Okay? Just kind of line it up. Curve this around a little bit. Keep it straight. Take it off the one hand. now, which way we're going to go? Yeah, show up here. You're going to try to line up for this. If you're off a little bit, I'll move this. Okay?
Jim,
Hey,
did you super quench that?
no.
Jackhammer bit?
No. There's our punch I made for the center. This is 4340. I draw it out with 5/8 inch. Too smaller. All these are, I just drew out a bar. I think it's 1 inch. And then I anneal it per their instructions. I think Rob told you about the heat treating app. You get close to it if you don't have a heat treat furnace.
You know, that's not uncommon.
And then you make your design. That's just a cut. And then you put it in an oven for an hour or two at 400 degrees. And that's it. That's all I did.
Make it stand better.
If you got into a more intricate design, maybe you would have to do more, but I have not. I've done, but I do have an oak leaf, and it's pretty intricate, and it's held up for 20 years. Of course, I don't know how many times I've punched it, but still. Yeah, that's 4340. It's a great alloy tool. Gotta have some of that around the house, a little section of it. If you don't have a power hammer, and you go over to a friend's house that has one, say, hey, I got this 1 foot piece of 4340. I'd like to draw it to 5/8 inch square. Oh, okay. Now go home with it when you're ready. Okay, you ready? All right, then, lady. Put it where you want it. Always look at it. That way you know if you need to correct it. That's where it's at. Now, that's where it's at. I'll put it on this thing.
Why are you using the brass hammer?
Because I don't want to use my hammer on this because it's hardened. And my hammer's nasty enough. And it's also heavy on top of that. It does a really good job. How many of you have one of these? All right, you've taken Rob's class?
I've heard Ron talk about it in demonstrations, yeah.
Okay, so you just made one?
No, I think I got mine at that estate sale we went to a couple years ago.
Okay. Well, Rob used to do a class and we would make these and we'd make all kinds of stuff. So those days are over. I grew up in blacksmithing in the Renaissance.
My attention, that, your hammer's dangerous.
What's that, Larry?
Your hammer's dangerous.
My hammer's dangerous?
Yeah, you need to
Because
trim
it's-
it.
Yeah.
That'll fly off.
Yeah, pieces will come off of it. I gotta adjust it. This is my old one. I brought it.
I mean, it's cool, don't get it wrong.
No, I'm sorry about that. It's
Well, no, I think he's saying mention it for the newer people so that they know about dressing the hammers or mushrooming,
Yeah, but I
things
should do
like
it
that.
here.
Yeah, if you dress it occasionally,
Yeah.
it won't get that bad.
That's right. You're right.
So where do you pick up a piece of brass like that? I'm supposed to do
All right, you know what you're doing? Oh, we're on the
good.
opposite side. Here, come over here. That won't work. No, it's still in the wrong direction. We got to change those parts.
Remember, it might have gotten warm by now on the tip.
machine shops and buy or sleeve. It's pretty fine. You can also order it up.
Okay, now let's try it again.
Just that thought.
Yeah.
Too many people, it's too many.
Yeah, we're thinking of that, and then some other different introductory classes, and that's when we're thinking about doing more hammer-ins versus demos and trying to balance it out. It's keeping something interesting enough for the older members to show up, as well as hoping to get the new people. But then if you rely too much on setting a progression of, okay, if you did this, now in the next class, what if someone who adds in the middle? So we're thinking about it. We're hoping to maybe do meetings every month, and like on the odd months have workshops, and on the even months have demos.
And I do that some of the,
Okay, in my
Being a
shop,
qualified
next
instructor.
thing I would do is take this up with
Yeah, no, I was looking at that kind of stuff, the event and all that. It's like, yeah, I like the idea.
Punch distorted some stuff, so I just dress it up. It's gonna go back in the fire, dress it up now. It's gonna take any grunt marks off of it. So, anyway, and, yeah. So this is kind of a wrong way to do things, because your tongs are going to get hot, and when if they get hot enough, they're going to lose their set, which is set to hold this metal. But I can reset them, and this is better because I want to balance it in there. I want to. I've got to figure out how to hold it in there without me standing there. So that's why I'm doing that, just for you guys. And I make these, they're all mild steel, and they're a little hot. They're probably about 200 degrees, but it's mild steel. I can cool them off. I cool off my mild steel tongs. I don't cool off the tongs that I bought from Grand Starter Off-Center Ford. You ever see those? Those are great tongs. They're made out of something like this 4340. I forget what it makes them out of. And you can shatter them. So I know what these are made out of. So I can kind of.
Every problem you have to really wash, keep it in water, and stuff is made in Pakistan. Palms and, Billy palms.
So, which ones are made in Pakistan?
You don't know what kind of steel they're made.
Yeah, but which brand is made in Pakistan?
Tom, Billy Tom.
Okay.
Sold by Pay-Tool and,
I don't have any of those.
some of these other black ones are like this.
Okay, I just kind of tapered that. I use the rounding part of my hammer, and it's kind of distorted. It's not flat, perfect. So I'm going to reheat it, clean it up with the flat part. Then we're done with that. And then what you would do is switch and do it on the other side. You know, rinse and repeat.
How far are you drifting it out from your center point? Your
I just taper it to the center.
oh, to
I mean, I
to
get
the center.
close, I get close to the center. I don't worry about it getting right on. But yeah, I'm pretty close, Larry.
Those are all for that one.
Pretty.
These are
Probably some of them I taper
the other
on
one.
to the center.
It's good to hear.
I look for that center punch mark to kind of line myself up. I'm hitting on the edges. I'm pulling it up like on an octagon, trying to take off some of that sharp corner. I'm gonna look at it before I let it cool off. It needs straightening just a little bit. Straighten it. Needs straightening a lot. Like that. That's what the mice is for. Oh, yeah. So, next thing I would do is switch to these. They're a little bit smaller tongs. And I would just like Tom said, you would never do this. Especially like junkyard steels. You don't know, it could have been a spring. They'll shatter it, even at that temperature. It gets down to 100, 200 degrees. It's not going to help the metal, but it's not going to shatter it. But if it's pretty hot, it's going to shatter it. Or it could just damage the structure. And then you've got this alloy steel that you wanted to use for something, and you've damaged it. You know, so it's not really good. So it's a little cupped in the back. I probably would have taken it off if I'd noticed it. But anyway. Hey, Jim. So, yes, sir. Jim, can I make a comment? Yeah.
So I would pay attention to when Jim hammers. You can see how the metal flows under his hammer. People have the tendency to hit and then let the hammer bounce, and that doesn't get you any work done in the metal. That's a technique that, you know, it's something ingrained in people that work with the hammer quite often. But so you want to hit and make sure that you hold the hammer in a slight kind of a slow motion. It's all just goes so fast, but that you don't get you want to have the hammer come down and hold it. That's what makes really the work on the steel.
Yeah. Same thing again, the saying about it bouncing. If your anvil is not secure, if it's moving around on you, you're losing energy. Thank you. Feel free to chime in. I can't remember. Same thing with your vise. I mean, you know, you really need it secure enough you can do anything. I know Nathan got a vise from Rob, and it's on a stand, and that stand is not as heavy as probably Nathan will make it someday, but it's pretty, he can stand on it. It's a big circle, and he can work with it. It's not permanent. It's not as heavy as this. I can move this if I want to. But anyway, okay, so now we're going to form it. You could rivet these on at this point and then form it, but I haven't done that yet. I don't know if that'll screw it up or not. So we're not doing that. I form it and then I do the riveting.
But you drill the holes before you form it.
I did. Yeah, I don't want to. The first one I did. I marked. I got it all in the right shape, and then I messed around with trying to drill. I mean, put that under the drill press, and I'm way too late to do a hand drill. I've got a drill press, and I've got a cordless drill with a countersink in it. I just drill it, and then I countersink it, and I'm done. So yeah, this is much easier to put in a vise than a drill press, or just to hold it if you're crazy enough on it. Or hold it with a pair of tongs. That's what I do. Put a pair of tongs on it. Flat jaw tongs work just fine. And just sit there and drill, and you're fine. So anyway, we gotta make sure we do it the right way.
How did you do the center star on that?
And I'm not a real blacksmith because I use vice grips.
We did have a question. How'd you do the center star decoration on it?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. One up had a bear paw. What? What? One of them had a bear paw. Yeah, I got a bear paw stamp. Okay. So, I need that piece back.
I think it's somewhere over there.
Thank you for pointing that out. I forgot. I'm forgetful. Angel, I'll need the help again. So if you buy a pair of tongs and you do this very much, like I said, those tongs are going to get warm enough to, when you grab it, squeeze it, you're working it, gonna open up, and then the next time they're not gonna fit your metal. It's easy enough to fix. You just heat it up to kind of a red heat, and put the piece of metal in, squeeze it in the vise, and pull these out. You can fix that, but if you do this in somebody's shop, they might say, hey, I don't want you heating up the Tom. Or especially if you're working in a coal forge, you've got them sitting there. You know, that's a big no-no. People will tell you, and they're right. But I don't have a way of balancing this, so this is what we're going to do. Don't do as I do, do as I say. You can put it like when I have here. This, you can put it squares to it, or you can put it one diagonal. Either way, whatever. Hey, can you see the center punch mark right there?
You gonna want the brass hammer?
Yeah, I did. All right. Thank you. Come in this time. Come in like this. You see if you can find the groove, and then lift it up. I'm gonna whack it.
Yeah, I do a lot of that too.
So I do this under a treadle hammer. I don't know if any of you know what a treadle hammer is, or I know some of you do. But it's just, it has a treadle that pulls the hammer down, and all these punches have survived that for years. My head is a piece of 4-inch square tubing filled with 70 pounds of lead. So it comes down with a lot of force. So those tools hold up. Okay. Get off of that. Good. So that's it. I mean, it's just. We did it on the wrong side. That's my fault. Oh well. You don't listen to it again. We did it on the wrong side.
Why is there?
What?
Why was there different size?
Why is there what?
Why is there different size? Well,
Because we did that first thing.
oh, gotcha.
Yeah. 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 Oh no, I made all. I made the bear's paw. I think Rob made the Oakley, and I made a maple. What you see it done? Little dribble tool with little cutting disc on it. Files, real small steel files. It's this time you're going to set it on there, and you're going to lift where this is flat. When I hit it, you're not going to take it off. You see where the old stamp is? Right there, you see that kind of weird thing? Right there. Don't move it. So she was holding that, and every time I hit it, it would bounce a little bit. But if you're doing it and you're pushing pressure down, it won't. Same way if you're hammering on this and this is bouncing around, put pressure down, and it won't do that. I discovered that because all this stuff I know is from making mistakes. So now we're finished with that. You ever, and so, I meant to do at the beginning was to thank you for letting me do this. I enjoy it a lot. I had a great time. Last year I got to do it twice. So if you're ever demonstrating for somebody, if you're ever working at a fair or something, people will reach out to grab stuff. So make sure you cool it off. And don't just, I've got this held in the bite in the palm. That could be warm. So really, really make sure you get this cooled off. That could get ugly. They're there to see you get hurt. I'm kidding. There's a guy, see that or you want to pass it on? There's a guy that wrote a book I like called Country Blacksmithing. His name's Charles Borrego. I think it's out of print. You can find it. He said he was demonstrating at a fair, and he he was working on a real fine piece, or he was trying to do something real detailed like I was doing over the edge, and he kept creeping down, and he missed his work and hit the anvil, and he hit it hard enough and it bounced up and hit him between the eyes. And it broke his skin, and he was bleeding down his nose, and luckily he was finished. And he said this guy came over to him and said, "That's the best blacksmithing demonstration I've ever seen. When are you going to do it again? I got to go get my wife and let her watch." And he was like, you know. So anyway, if you ever demonstrating, just be careful. Handing people stuff. They want to get close because it's fun. So be careful. Be aware of what you're doing. I'm the least aware of what I'm doing. The gentleman that was sitting there by Larry that said my hammer was dangerous, he's right. I was demonstrating every year for the 3rd grade at one of the schools in the mountains 25 years ago. They were studying colonial times. And I would go down with a portable coal forge and a small anvil, and I would make nails. And I'd make a nail for each student. And because they were reading about Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and all these people that life was shot, and they made thousands and thousands of nails. So I'm sitting there wailing away on this thing, and the kids are probably twice as far back as these guys that are sitting on the ground. And I'm wailing away, and my hammerhead came off. And it grazed one of them. It didn't hurt him, it just grazed him. It hit the ground. And I'm sure I panicked. My wife was one of the special ed teachers. Her friends were the teachers. And I'm sure I panicked. And I had no idea what I said, because I was finished. That was the last nail. So, I had no idea what I said. But if I year, I got a packet of letters from the kids. The teachers had the kids write letters about the experience. And I'm reading them, and they're cute as fun, you know, and they're very interesting. They observe certain things. And then I get to this one by this little boy, and it said, "You were right. If you get hit by the blacksmith's hammer, you have good luck for a whole week. I found $1 in the Walmart parking lot." I thought, how did I come up with that? You're the luckiest kid alive.
Well, that's good luck to get hit by a black bug.
Maybe I read that somewhere. I don't know.
No,
But anyway, it made me laugh. I'll never forget. So,
Did you get luck when
did
Thomas hit
this.
you? Okay, I thought so.
The way I do it, you need some bending forks. You can make the traditional blacksmith one. This is made out of 1 inch by 3/8. It's a great tool. Or you can go to the flea market and find one of these and weld some 3/8 inch round on it. It's adjustable. Put a lot of weld on it. So anyway, it's just, I mean, there's, what I'm trying to get across is, don't let, because you don't have one of these, stop you. There's a million ways to do it. We can take another pair of tongs and just don't let it see you. You'll get there. I've been doing it long enough that I've got quite a collection. And I'm working from the centers and hopefully, wire brush is great for removing scale. Whacking on the edge will knock some of it off. Sometimes it's hard to get off. You just have to kind of figure out what you're going to do. So, you know, a form is great. If I didn't have a form, I would have come over here and did it like we did the hook. If you have a step on the anvil, you can sit here with it cold and hit on it, and it'll shape it. You just have to keep moving it. Oh, and the other thing is, I could have bent these out to like a 45 before I did that. You can do that too. Now we just end up, you know, put it on the form. But, you know, kind of like what Tom was saying about people tell you how to do stuff. There's a guy named Ed McCaffrey who's a really good knife maker. And on the front of his website it says, "This is how I do it." Big letters, bold. This is how I do it. That's what he means. It's like, okay, somebody told you you can do it this way. I don't care. This is how I do it. You go work in his shop to be like, this is how you're going to do it. You're in my shop. You're going to do it this way. You're working for me. I was a plumber. I had a plumbing company. One of the guys that worked with me asked my wife once, or my wife asked him, what's it like working with Jim? As long as you do everything exactly the way he does, you do everything my way. No, I didn't realize I was that. process down better than you know. The way I do it works. There'd be a lot more precise, some that work. I admire how they do it. But I'm not going to try to be there. So now we got that shape. It's got a little bit of a twist to it. Straighten up the device.
Jim, I think I heard you say you've never sold one.
Not one of these yet. I just don't. How much money do you have? Let me see your wallet. No, count it out. What's up, Rick?
I was just gonna say, I'm surprised you made a jig, these jigs. How, you know, if you haven't done that much production, or have you done a lot of production? I would think you were thinking like a jig.
Well, I knew I was going to make a jig because I wanted to be fairly uniform. If I do it over this, you know, I can make them uniform and it's going to take more time. And I have a welder and I've got a cone mandrel. I was able to bend this and get it exactly the size I wanted.
I was just wondering what your production was gonna be as far as numbers wise, and make it worth making the jig, that's all.
I don't know.
Well, it's also you and
I haven't bothered you. I feel like, I don't know. I'm worried that I'm a little too slow on it to make it where somebody would buy it. What do you think something like that would sell? I mean, just guess. An estimate.
I would market, I don't know, $100?
I was thinking between 50 would be really cheap and 100 would be about the limit, so I might go 75, 85. That's what I was thinking. Depends on what?
How fast you are.
That's right, and I'm not the fastest blacksmith. I mean, I know I've watched you guys, they are just quick. And I'm faster than I was 30 years ago.
Of course.
But anyway.
I mean, if you don't want to make one jig, you can do it over a hole. Roll it over a hole, and then you can adjust it. If it's like a normal thing, making it everything takes you longer.
Okay.
But then, just the other thing.
Once you make something like that, where would you sell it? Once you make something like that, where would you sell it?
You guys sell it online or find a shop? And you got a shop. By the way, Tammy has an office shop in the Harris, and she's the one, I went down and they did all my copies. And they gave us a nice discount.
Page stores will sell stuff like
well, one of the
that. Put it on consignment to the page store.
one of the other things is we do have a booth at the state fair every year, and we do have members that will sell some of their stuff at the state fair, just because it also adds to letting people see our art, get interested in our art. Usually we have a little demo area as we go through, but then we also have a couple of different things there and see what goes, what doesn't. My usual line is we're selling stuff so we can buy more metal to make more stuff, is what we're out there to do.
They were great.
And that's why I have
Okay.
multiple of these bottles.
So, if you do what I did here, this gets hot, eventually the spring will warp. You have to really watch that. A bigger one would have been better, but I bought my baby. So like I said, we're gonna do this kind of like we're cooking. So we got this piece made, we started making hooks. We could have, I could have brought a drill, hand drill, we could drill these out, but I figure you guys can figure that out. At least that's, you know, I would imagine everybody can figure that out. So now we're just gonna put it together, and this is just simple. Once you've got that done.
No, he's been in the back there.
Oh, has he?
Yep.
You could do this hot. You could get hot rivets, heat them up in there, and do this all hot. If your hole was distorted, that would be the way to do it. The hot rivet will fill the hole. But it's just not necessary. These small rivets.
It was made of helmet
I forgot to bring my rivet tool that holds the head and keeps it from distorting.
It can't be no worse than mine.
So these aren't going to look exactly like those. But they'll be fine.
I
Look
recognize
handmade.
I recognize
So
this.
if you're doing this and you don't have a rivet setting tool like I have at home, just put it over the edge, and you got to hold onto the hook and push down on it, or it'll separate, and your rivet won't set right. That's all there is to it. It distorted my rivet a little bit here in the front. You can make a tool by just taking a piece of metal and drilling a 3/16 or 3/4 inch hole in it and use that. You could, if you've got an anvil, and let's say, I don't know, this I think is 1.25 inch, let's say it's 1 inch, you could go buy some 1 inch by 1/2 inch flat bar, bend it in half to make the 1 inch hardy, bend that down, and make make the tools into that, make a little holes. You can have a whole series of rivet sets. But anyway, this is just to show you how quick this goes. It's pretty easy. I would recommend that you buy rivets. If all you need, if you've made a pair of tongs, let's say you're taking a class or you're trying to make a pair of tongs and you need one rivet, yeah, make a rivet. But if you're going to do a bunch of this stuff, I would buy some rivets. Rivets are great to make. It's a good lesson. But if you're going to make, say, 4 of these for Christmas presents this December for your family, that's 18 rivets or 16 rivets. Yeah. 4 times 4 is 16. Yeah. Anyway.
Math?
It's all math. So anyway, it's just like you can buy these rivets. I've got a ton of rivets. But let's say that you want to do this and Dave wants to do it, and y'all been sitting around talking, and Robert O'Bally over there wants to do it, and Alex, they ought to do that. Band together and buy rivets and save on shipping. I think these rivets, these are 3/16 by 5/8. One of the sources on your sheet there is Blacksmith Depot. I think they're 10 cents a piece. But if you buy 5 of them, that's 50 cents. You're going to pay $6-7 for the shipping. So, we had to find a way to get around that. I bought a lot of variety at one time. So just hold your hook straight, hold it tight against it, try not to hit your thumb. You're just sitting there bouncing this rounded part of the hammer. You're trying to keep your head out of the way so you won't hurt yourself like that guy I told you about. And when you're finished, if you want to, you can take a little ball peen and you can round the edges and make it look really pretty. I think these are the same size rivets that Rob used in his last demo. Maybe they were a little longer, maybe they were 3/4.
Usually you want the one that's easy to get a drill for, and then one that's easy to right thickness.
Yeah. Anybody asks you to come up and hold this for them, tell them no. Their hammer's way too close. These are going to be on the back. Nobody's going to see them. Unless they look. 3 of them and 7 unless they're anal and they look. Yeah. That's for anal.
That's one of the fun things when you can actually go to the museum pieces and some of the fine pieces. If you look at the front, it's always beautiful. It's amazing. When you can actually find the shots of things in the back, you'll be surprised how much stuff gets hidden in places that a lot of the smiths and artisans will go and they'll look because they want to know how it was actually made, and you can see. And there's some things like masterwork helmets where you can see where they actually put in another piece of metal, cut it, and then riveted it, and then worked over it to hide that it was a repair. So not everything is done perfect, no matter how much it looks that way from the outside.
Okay. When you're finished, kind of adjust them, kind of tight. And then you either gotta, whatever you're gonna do, this one was, after I finished it, the forge was off, I stuck it in the forge for 1 minute. It was cold. I stuck it in the forge for 1 minute. I timed it. I brought it out, it had gotten this bluish, I'd shined it up. So it had this bluish timber colors here and the kind of, what do they call that? Amber. And then I hung it up and I started waxing it and gave it this finish, which I think is real pretty. This one, I make hoops out of club soda. I took it, hung it out in the tree, and painted it with that clear matte finish rattle can spray paint. It looks nice too, but you can see the difference. That's what they started out as. That's a hot wax finish, a little more trouble. Don't let it get too hot. If I'd left it in there 30 more seconds, the wax would have been burning. But that's how quickly it heated up just to that temperature where it would melt the wax and sink into the forge. And then you just paint them. They look great that way too. It's up to you. However you want to finish them. Where? I use paste wax, and I've melted a tiny bit of beeswax in it, and then I put a teaspoon of powdered graphite in it. And while it's all melted, and it makes things blacker.
So that's how you got the color in it.
Yeah, you can use, the powdered graphite just makes it dark. Much darker wax. Yeah, just a regular paste wax would probably come out more like that. I like the dark one. Anyway, yeah, it's just, something to do. There's a bunch of old recipes. Tom, you may know about it. Some of them use the pan dryer. I don't know. They would take beeswax and they would take boiled linseed oil. And
That's a common one.
Hand dryer, just a tiny bit of that. That helps it to just dry out. Anyway, all the old metal work you see on these buildings from the turn of the century, that's what they had on. And the blacksmith would go back after he installed it. Once a year in the summertime, he just melt this stuff and paint it on there while the metal was hot in the sun. And he did that for like years. And eventually it built such a patina on there that they don't rust. And that's an old you buy an old blacksmith book, one of the old ones, don't have that recipe. And other blacksmiths have recipes for style.
One of the biggest things you want to consider is what will it be used for. A lot of people, if it's going to go outside, they like paint or a couple of different plating. Rob Gunther had some recommendations on different powder coats or things like that that allowed you to keep the detail while going through that. If it's something that's going to hang on the wall, you're not too concerned about if it's paint or some of the wax. If you're going to use it and you want it to be food safe, then either you want to season it like cast iron or you want to just use a food safe wax like a beeswax or something like that, depending on what it is. And that's usually, but there's a lot of different mixtures out there, and some of them, trying to get a darker color, trying to do this or to do that. But your main goal is just to prevent it from rusting, because that's what iron wants to do when exposed to air, is rust.
Like if I make a tasting spoon or a fork or something, I just put it in the oven, a couple hundred degrees, and I take it out and put it on the cooking show. It's on the cooking show. I just use olive oil or vegetable oil or something because I want it to be food safe. I'm not going to use anything that has any. I don't even like beeswax because they use pesticides in the bees. So I don't use any kind of wax. I've watched way too many bee videos.
Well, as long as you know how to season it properly, it's most people today. It's like, oh look, it's a pan, and they put the cast iron skillet into the dishwasher, and then you have screaming and gnashing of teeth and all that.
But if it's inside, you wax it or you boil it while it's hot and leave it before. In New Mexico, it'll be fine. I'm originally from Alabama, and it will not be fine inside there. The humidity is 100%. You run the air conditioner all day long. There's still the humidity there will be 30-40%. Inside with the air conditioner running at full speed, and people are like, wow, it's low humidity today. And I go, in New Mexico, it never gets above 30%. I said, what do you mean? But everybody I know in Alabama is like, everything runs. My animals are all running.
And then going back, like he said, with the one that he got that had the heat color, where he has the nice brass or the yellow color as well as the blue colors. And like Rob Gunther did a demonstration on his black delicious apples, and the way he got the color was heat it to a certain temperature and then hit it with a stainless steel brush to be able to get the color that he wanted in that particular aspect. And if you do something like that, then you really have to consider, okay, am I doing a clear coat? Am I doing this? Because seasoning will definitely darken. So do you want to keep the color? Do you not want? And that's where the patina can come in. If you want a particular rust color or a specific look, then you have to figure out how do you protect the metal without losing or allowing it to go further than you want it.
So another thing you can do is, like in my shop, if I didn't keep the scale off, when we had a meeting in June, Jens was our demonstrator, gentleman over here, and his whole thing was back to basics. He really focused on the basics. Basics is when you're, a lot of times when you come out of the forge, you knock this scale off, it'll come off real easy when it's on. A lot of times I forget to, lazy or whatever, but if you do that, and say you're like me, go down to Lowe's, get some of that 30% vinegar, and get one of those storage tubs that's big enough, and put the vinegar in there and stick this in there for a few hours, and it'll come out clean as a whistle. You've got to rinse it deep whatever.
Neutralize it.
Neutralize it.
Yeah. But vinegar is a great finish. We had a blacksmith demonstrate for us, I think in 2018, Mark Asbury, and that's one of the things he used it in his shop to make sure everything gets cleaned out. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, you use muriatic acid." Well, that stuff is pretty toxic. You know, if you're sitting there opening the jar of muriatic acid, the reason vinegar, you can probably say things rinse them off. So anyway, 30% vinegar that's selling at Lowe's and down the road. it lasts for a while. It'll start turning metal color on the steel because all this stuff is coming off of the door. It'll last a long time. Whenever it's over, put in a 5-gallon bucket with water so they can go in. It's fine. So anyway, any more questions? I'm kind of done, guys. I should have planned something else. But lunch is early. Thank you.
So I'm known for being long-winded, so I'm just
okay.
say a few things. You know,
No, it's not.
So just some quick terminology stuff that some of you new people might not be too familiar with. You might have heard a lot of different terms such as high carbon, tool steel, spring steel, mild steel, 440, and I forget the other steel names that were specifically used up here. The long and short of it is this: spring steel, tool steel, knife maker steel, high carbon steel, those are usually all referred to kind of in the same breath because all of those are kind of used for the same purposes. It's a high carbon steel which allows you to heat treat the metal. When you heat treat the metal, it allows it to bend or maintain its form. It's able to harden it. So when we make a punch or a tool that we want to work against other metals, we want that high carbon so that we can heat treat and harden it so it will move the rest of the steel. And it's very generic to call it spring steel, tool steel, high carbon steel. And there are solid definitions for what that should be. And then you have the specific names, the 1098, the 440. There's different names that actually tell you how much iron, how much carbon, how much other stuff is in that actual number sequence. And if you start looking at the books, they will tell you how it breaks out. Now, if you want to make a knife and you want to make a beautiful, solid, amazing knife, you will most likely go to a choice steel or to one of the places. You will buy a specific kind of steel that you can then either use a book or use a handy-dandy free app that will tell you exactly how to heat treat it. And it's like Betty Crocker's baking. You follow the directions, and more than likely you're going to have a success. Meanwhile, if you go to the junkyard and you grab a leaf spring or a coil spring, for starting, that's great. It's cheap, it's easy to grab, and for some of these tools, you're able to do amazing things with that. You're just taking a little bit more of a risk because you don't know exactly what that is. And that's why when we talk about junkyard steel, we can walk out there and we can look and go, okay, that's obviously a coil spring. Chances are it's going to do this, 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 and this, so I can make that happen. I can bring it back to my shop, I can hit it with a grinder, I can watch sparks fly and go, yes, I think that that's what it's going to do. I can even take some of it, heat it up, quench it in oil, run a file on it, and be all like, okay, yes, it's hardenable, or it does this, or it does that. But there's still the risk that won't happen. Mild steel is another example of this because currently we might go down to Choice or a couple of the other places, buy mild steel, they sell it in 20-foot lengths. We can buy as much and it's not overly expensive. When we get that, usually we know the quality of what it is. I say usually because right now, with the economy and all that the way it is, everyone's trying to save money wherever they can. And mild steel has a wide range of what it can have in it. And so some people have gotten mild steel and it did exactly what they wanted. Some of it works a little different, which is why we recommend testing things. But mild steel, if you go down to Home Depot and you buy just a piece of metal they have off the rack, you really don't know what you're getting, and that's when you can have someone like, yeah, it's black, let me put it in the water. And my buddy did this. He wanted to make straps for a chest. Bent it all, did it, picked it up. Yeah, that's good. Dropped it on his anvil like that and it snapped right off. And it was actually hardenable in that, and he just put in that time. So, yes.
That same advice goes for rebar. I've heard people say, oh, use rebar. You're like, rebar is like, you don't have any idea what's in that. It's cheap, but
Rebar used to be the thing that was mystery meat. You have no idea what's in it. Now that's kind of bled into mild seals, and only when you go to a major dealer and buy something specifically by name and number, because those are regulated that they will meet within that range. It's kind of like going, yeah, I got this silver necklace from Walmart, versus, hey, I went to Rio Grande and I got this silver necklace. One of those is probably pure silver, one of those might be plated or a bad mix. So you just got to keep an eye on that. If you have any questions, always feel free to ask. A lot of our people give that because a lot of us know where we started. Now, the next thing I wanted to say is this is perhaps one of my favorite demos I've seen in a good while, and that's mostly because of this. I'd say 80% of today's demonstration was done with one hammer. One hammer, yeah, a vise, which you might be able to get, and most of it was done over the flat face of the anvil. You didn't even use the horn. It shows you that you can make something amazing from the simplest of tools. And so when you're starting it, you can only find one hammer or two hammers, or one hammer and one pair of tongs. You can still make this work. Never think that you have to go out and start buying a whole bunch of stuff. Because really, you can make a tool work as long as you know how you want to make it work. So please, all you new people, keep that in mind. You can do this with simple starting tools. Another thing that was brought up when we started was the forge. And there was a lot of different talk about different things that you can start with the forge and how you can make this and how you can have this kind of door, you can have that. The only advice I definitely give on forges is do not, for the love of God, try and do the sand and plaster of Paris propane forge that you will find on YouTube very, very quickly. And the reason for that is everyone will tell you it's cheap, it's cheap, it's cheap. It is, but all the money you think you're saving by doing sand and plaster of Paris, you're going to spend on extra propane because that thing does not hold or maintain heat effectively, and it will cost you more money in the long run. There are great websites. iForge Iron has great tutorials on how to build your own forge. YouTube has a couple. Nowadays, you can go on Amazon and order perfectly acceptable forges. They will not be the most efficient. They might not let you forge weld in it. But one of the things you've probably also heard is people said they developed is how they change and how they improve. And one of the biggest things you eventually improve as a blacksmith is your equipment. And there aren't too many people that start with one forge and stay with it forever. Forges are consumable. They will break down on you. You will replace them over time. You'll find what you like, find what you don't like. So don't think that you have to get stuck in where you start, except that you can grow. And if you want advice, you want questions, feel free to ask. Learning on a forge like this is fantastic. But I kept thinking I wanted something like this all the time. I thought this would be because it's easy to open and load, close, load, all that kind of stuff. Until I really started working on one and realized that I actually have a tendency to come in with my hand from the top. So I kept destroying gloves and making my hand not happy. So I learned that I would prefer things that go from the side. Coal forges I love for certain things. Propane forges I love for certain things. You learn these things as you go in. Feel free to try and to ask questions.
So, like I said earlier, I kind of came along in the renaissance of blacksmithing. A band I got started in the 70s in Lumpkin, Georgia. A group of about 30 guys got together. Now it's worldwide. And I came in about the mid-80s. And there were all kinds of opportunities, and we can do that again. We just have to kind of get a group together. But I went to a workshop to build my gas forge. It was 30 of us. And there were two guys doing one part and two guys doing one part. And we all put these things together. And there were a lot more demonstration handouts. at that time. We were able to build a library. Everybody was trying to figure out how to do it. Rob's got a little gas horse that I'd like to build, and it's a pipe, and it has a door on both ends, so we can pass something through. But the doors go up. I like my guillotine door because if I put a piece over to the side, it doesn't get as hot like one of these pieces. I can work this with my hand if I'm in my forge real carefully. I can work it before I get the paper started before it gets hot. I'm wearing one of these hot nail gloves. And I did it the other day, and I've got a heat gun. I don't remember what it's called. I was testing it, and I was getting up to 250, 275. And I was wearing this, and I was still able to perform. So these you can get a group of 3 to 6 guys together, order them online through Amazon. They work out to $6 a piece. I did that earlier in the year, and I think Jason and Angel got a pair, and Alan got a pair, and April got a pair, and I've got 2 or 3 pair left. So you can do that, because if you buy them from the company, this is Stoffer gloves. You buy from them, the gloves are $6 a piece, and by the time you ship them, you buy 2 or 3 gloves and $10 a glove. So getting a group together by 6 is a great idea. Same way with the ribbons, same way with a lot of this stuff. So anyway.
One more thing I'll kind of add on to that was the guy that started teaching me, tongs are great. It takes a while to get used to tongs. There's nothing wrong. Like, ideally, if you're going to make uniform pieces, you want to cut your pieces beforehand, make them the size. That way they're all uniform, you're not doing too much. If you're doing one-off S-hooks, you can start with a 3-foot piece long, and that way you can get away from using tongs until you're ready to use tongs. We are going to have a second demonstration I was just told about, so we'll be getting that going here in a little bit. For those of you that are new, I need to touch on a couple of different things that you might not be familiar with. Number one, there's going to be a potluck lunch. You can see some people are already starting to snack. Feel free to go for it. We are also going to have something called Iron in the Hat. We are going to have a raffle. This gives you the opportunity to buy tickets. Well, maybe while they're starting up, but we'll check the time if you want to get them. Ask your assistant. She can decide which one she wants to make. Okay, so Iron in the Hat, we sell raffle tickets. It's what, remind me, $1 each for
6 for $5.
for $5. I wanted to make sure I didn't say it wrong, otherwise I was going to say 5 for $6. So it's $1 each, or you can get 6 for $5. And then we'll have the raffle. You'll see the different items that are available on the table back there. These are items that our club members made. Some of it's steel that might be useful to a shop, things like that. So we have the food, we have that. Since we do have a lot of new people here, I wanted to highlight, we will be at the State Fair. The State Fair is one of our major recruitment opportunities. We do ask members to volunteer and help us with the State Fair. I also want to bring this up because the meeting immediately after the State Fair, the next month, remember we have meetings the first of every other month, every even month. That first meeting, I'm really going to do a push to have a hands-on. I'm going to have a push to have a hands-on class. So I'm hoping to have beginner stations, intermediate stations, and maybe an advanced station. So please, if you have to pick and choose what meetings you might want to come to, I highly recommend the meeting after that, especially if you want to get some hands-on experience. Also, feel free to check our website, feel free to communicate with us, and we'll be happy to get you going. So if you want to buy tickets, those 2 people right there are who you buy the tickets for Iron in the Hat from. Everything else is set up. Any questions? Told you I like to talk. Always feel free to tell me to shut up.
Got a sign-up sheet, one
So the sign-up sheet should be right at that same spot with these two. Let me. Where's the sign-in? I just got asked about it. Let me on the- So sign-in sheet, great opportunity for you to give us your email so that we can
Yeah.
available right there.
Couple of guys I can pull that
Hope I didn't talk too fast there near the end.
You did good.